The Holy Gospel according to St. John, beginning with the first verse of the 10th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. Jesus, speaking to his disciples, said these words, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers." This figure Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So Jesus again said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not heed them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep." The Gospel of the Lord. Well, greetings. It is good to be with you again. I always, when I hear these shepherd stories, I always revert back to my childhood, and we raised sheep on my parents' little farm, our hobby farm. And the sheep that we had were probably actually fairly similar to the sheep that are being referred to in Jesus' story here. They were a haired sheep, which meant they did get in the winter wool, but you didn't necessarily have to shear them. The wool would naturally sort of fall off in the spring, and you could pull it out. But the thing about these sheep is that they had personality in excess. Now, we had a ram, and I forget what the ram's original name was. It had a name, I think it was Coco was the ram's original name, and it had big horns, and we had a friend of our family that would come and help us with livestock and things like that, and she decided that she needed to rename the ram Rambo, because Rambo the ram, and if ever there was a good stereotypical name for a ram, it's Rambo, right? Rambo the ram lived up to his name in every way. If he saw you coming near him, his first thing to do was to start stamping the ground and start backing up, and then he would charge you and he would try to ram you. So he was not the friendliest of creatures, but for some reason, Rambo and I, Coco and I, had a bit of a relationship. He and I got along better than anyone else. He didn't get along with my dad, didn't get along with my brother. My mom didn't have anything to do with the sheep unless it was absolutely necessary. She was smart in that respect. But he and I had a relationship. And part of it was that we would play this game, and he would come up, and he would walk up to me, and he'd place his horns, his forehead against my leg, and he'd sort of push a little bit. And then you know how a cat, when it wants to prove that it owns you, because cats own us, not the other way around, and it rubs its head up against you, that's a cat's way of making sure that you know who's in charge. And that's kind of what he would do. He would come and rub, and then, though, he would do this thing where he would try to hook his horn around my leg and trip me up. Well, we'd do this, and then we'd play this game, and he would back up and he would ram, and as he was ramming, I'd come in and he'd run, and I'd grab him by the horns and I'd flip him on his back, and flip him over and throw him down, and he thought this was great fun. Only a ram would think this is great fun, and we would do that for, over and over and over again. But he knew me. He knew me, he knew my smell, he knew my voice, and, I'm not sure, maybe frenemies is a good name, because he was definitely constantly trying to take me out, but he was also, friendly with me at times as well. So maybe a true frenemy is what I had in Rambo. Sheep are not, they're not smart, but they are crafty, and they do things their own way. When you think about this story about the sheepfold, I think a lot of times we think about something that's got some wooden fences, but most of the places where these sheep were out being cared for by shepherds, where they were in the grazing land, there wasn't a lot of wood. So these sheepfolds were made of stone. And sometimes they were made with bits of wood, and they were made with whatever material you could get. But sheep jump really high, so the walls of these sheepfold would be quite high. They might be 6 feet high, 4 feet to 6 feet high, and they would be thick, and they'd be built out of stone and bits of wood and anything that you could. And there'd be this great wall. And then within the sheepfold, if there were lots of shepherds in that area, within that sheepfold, more than one shepherd might bring his sheep into the same fold for nighttime. And so all of the sheep would be gathered together, and there would be a great gate. And because there's more than one shepherd there, there's one person that's responsible for the gate. And so you come in and you leave your sheep kind of like the coat check, and the guy at the gate says, aha, Billy Joe, you just left some sheep here, and you left 35 sheep. And so Billy Joe goes out and he has his dinner and he sleeps, and then he comes back in the morning and the gatekeeper says, aha, it's Billy Joe again. Go in and get your sheep, and you come out with 35 sheep. And so that's kind of how it worked. There is this gatekeeper. But in those dark nights when there were thieves about, thieves would come, and they would come around the back side of these large enclosures when most of the shepherds are asleep, and they would climb over these great thick walls, and they would steal the sheep. But sheep don't like to necessarily be picked up. And so very often stealing a sheep might mean in order to get it over the wall, you had to kill it first. In order to steal a sheep, you might have to try to trick the gatekeeper and take somebody else's sheep instead of yours. A shepherd wants to keep his sheep healthy, wants to lead them to the best pastures, the best water, protect them from the wolves and the other wild animals, protect them from the thieves. They want those sheep to be healthy and vibrant and abundant. They want them to have lots of babies. They want them to have wonderful wool. They want them to get fat and juicy. And yeah, in this case, the metaphor breaks down a little bit because, yeah, the shepherd is going to eat some of the sheep. Jesus does not eat us, thank goodness. But the shepherd wants what's best for the sheep. The thief does not. There are lots of things in our world that want to be our shepherd, want to claim to want what's best for us, when really they are only interested in themselves. Like that thief who is willing to kill the sheep just to get it over the wall. Like that thief who cares nothing for what happens in the long run about how many babies this sheep will have, how much wool it produces, only cares about getting it for the quick turnaround. And so it was in Jesus' time. In Jesus' time, there were false shepherds. The Roman government was one of them. The Roman government claimed that if you are just doing things our way, if you are perfectly obedient to us, your life will be filled with economic success and peace and vibrance, and you won't have to worry about anything ever again. You just pay your taxes, you do what the soldiers say, you go where you're supposed to go, you don't go where you're not supposed to go, and you will have peace and abundance. That was the promise of the Roman government. It wasn't a promise that the Roman government could fulfill. It promised peace, it promised abundance, and it brought war and heartache and bloodshed, and it brought poverty. There were religious leaders that promised, follow us, we are good shepherds for you. And if you just obey every one of the laws of the Torah, every one of them perfectly, if you pay your temple taxes, if you come and you experience all of these religious experiences and you come to the temple and you make your sacrifices and you do everything like a good Jew, you do everything perfectly, then you will be blessed by God, and God will give you abundance, and God will give you peace. And it didn't work. It didn't work because every time we try to climb that ladder to God, we find ourselves tottering on the top of a ladder all on our own. The problem is when we try to climb a ladder to God, we end up on our own because God has already come down to us. We need not climb a ladder. God comes to us. There were other religions that were claiming to be good shepherds. There were all of the Roman gods and goddesses that you could, make sacrifices to, you could pay money to, you could honor. And in doing so, they promised that you would get good crops and you would have good children. The good shepherd doesn't behave that way. The good shepherd says, I come to you, and I will walk with you, and I will be with you. You will go out to pasture, and I will be with you. Storms will come, and I will be with you. Water will be hard to find, and I will be with you. You will get lost, and you will be lonely, and I will be with you. You will find that your life is broken, that you can't do it on your own. And the Good Shepherd says, I will lay down my life for you. In our world, there are false shepherds that are trying to claim to be the way to success, to abundance. In our world, we have careers that promise that if you just find the right career, and if you just climb that career ladder, and if you do everything just right, then you're going to have wealth, and you're going to have prosperity, and you're going to have everything you need, including, 2.5 children, 4.5 cars, 2.5 extra houses, and everything else. But our careers can't save us. They give us some stability, and those of us who have careers are blessed to have them. But they cannot save us because they also bring with them heartache and turmoil and struggle. They can keep some promises, but they don't tell you the whole story. There are various clubs and movements that are good, and sometimes we look at these as ways of finding salvation. If I just do enough good stuff in the community, right? If I am part of the Kiwanis or the Lions or Rotary or one of those, and I just do enough really good stuff, then what goes around comes around, and we can make the world a better place. I'm a former Rotary member. I love Rotary, and it does some wonderful things, but it cannot save us. It is not a replacement for a God who walks with us and holds us in the midst of hardship and trial. When the Good Shepherd says that he came to give us life abundant, he does not promise that it will be a life free of hardship, free of pain, free of loneliness. He does not promise us that if we just have enough faith, we know that we won't get sick with COVID. Instead, what God says is that if you walk with him step by step, And if you are aware that He is walking with you wherever you go, step by step, you will be led to still water. That you may find yourself in the valley of the shadow of death, but you will not stay there. That the Good Shepherd will lead you through that valley. That you may find yourself face to face with enemies. Enemies like cancer. Enemies like financial bankruptcy. Enemies like broken relationships. You will find yourself face to face with the world's greatest enemies, and the Lord will sit down with you, give you sanctuary, and prepare a meal for you, so that when it comes time to face those realities, you are not alone. You are nourished and replenished, and God is at your side. We have a good shepherd who comes to give us life abundant. Not easy life, but good life. Good life where we know that there is nothing that we need to do to get closer to God. We don't need to earn God's love. God has us completely. God is with us no matter where we go or what we do, no matter what we say or fail to say. God is with us, and God says He's with us so much that He says we're worth dying for. And because we know God is with us, we don't need to earn His love. As we live this abundant life, we need not focus on ourselves and our own holiness. Instead, we can turn to our neighbors. We can share God's love and abundance and peace with others. And we can be part of God's presence in their life when they find themselves in that valley of the shadow of death. We have a good shepherd. He is not a false shepherd who wants only to use us for his own gain. He wants what is best for us, now and always. Amen.